Well, here I am again with the Royal Enfield 500 Electra X that's going to become Asbo number 41, and I've already made a couple of videos about this machine, and at the moment we're in the position where I've fitted the piston and the piston rings are back on, base gasket, the barrel's obviously already been shortened, and I've got the new head gasket in place, and I've got the piston parked right at top dead centre there, and all we have is the 1.5mm or so thickness of new head gasket to separate the flat area of the piston crown and the underside of the cylinder head where the squish band areas are from each other. So by the time that compresses, it's going to be well clear of 1.2, 1.3mm squish clearance, which will be about right really. As long as you're in the range of 1 to 1.5mm you're fine. So like I say, it's 1.5 before we even compress the gasket at all, so that's great. And I've got the little circlip and the valve lifter collar removed from the exhaust cam follower, ready to allow it to drop further onto the smaller base circles of the camshafts I'm going to fit in there, which will be one of my next jobs once I've got the cylinder head on. And talking of the cylinder head, got that here. I've already discussed what I was going to do with valves. Well, now maybe it'll be possible to see. I've got the inlet valve there, and hopefully we'll be able to see where I've sort of chamfered it, so that it just gives that little bit more room when the valve is opening and coming towards the piston on the overlap top dead centre. It'll just give a little bit more space between the valve and the piston. And likewise I've done the same on the exhaust valve, although that's not so critical because it's smaller in diameter anyway, so naturally more out of the way than the inlet is. So and it's closing, and so that's actually less of a worry than the inlet valve. The inlet valve always seems to get into trouble first. But by the time I retard the inlet cam timing as well, so that the valve opens that little bit later, that will get it out the way of the piston a little bit more. So got all that, and on top of that the exhaust valve seat has been cut back into the head, probably taken about a millimetre at least off the height of that. It was actually protruding right into the head and had a nasty sort of sharp edge around the back of it, all stuck into the combustion chamber. So I've cut the seat back flush with the rest of the combustion chamber, and I've also just sort of chamfered and eased back this area of the combustion chamber and squish band to allow the inlet valve to hopefully let a little bit more incoming charge in around this area, because this was very restrictive before. So I've made a little bit more room for incoming mixture there, because I noticed that although this valve, we got a low mileage bike here, and although I had to recut this valve seat to sink it further into the head as I wanted and then grind the valve in, theoretically I needn't have touched this one, but I thought I'll just give it a little grind in just to make sure all is well. And I found out that there was an area around here on the valve seat that was staying shiny, and it stayed shiny for a long time when I was grinding in. And I believe that maybe because that's the best area for the incoming charge to come through, and very little happens or happened around here, that the incoming charge, the mixture of air and liquid fuel coming in, has actually worn away that area of the valve seat a little bit compared to this area. And I spent nearly a couple of hours grinding that valve into that seat to get a good seating all the way around again, and there was no burning or anything. I think it was just worn away by incoming mixture. So hopefully that might equalise out what happens to the incoming charge and maybe balance things out better, as well as generally help the breathing of the engine and boost the performance. The cylinder head itself, the inlet port, is big enough, I think. And what you've got there in the cylinder head I know to be capable of producing over 33.5 horsepower at the rear wheel and over 100 miles an hour, because the first Electra X I ever tuned, which was for Hitchcocks incidentally in 2008, did 103 miles an hour and 33.34 bhp at the rear wheel. So and I was asked to leave the head alone because the kit that they were going to base on my tuning work had to be a bolt-on job rather than anyone having to try and port their cylinder heads and alter things in there. So I know that the cylinder heads are well up to it. So apart from what I've done here that can be seen, the ports have remained completely standard on this one as well. So it won't be too long before we'll find out how things go, and I'm hoping that they'll go very well indeed. So my next job is going to be get this cylinder head onto the engine, and from then on, well, it's the weekend, so I'll probably leave it there once the head's in position, and I'll carry on with the cams and valve timing and other bits and pieces next week, and probably get it running sometime during the middle of next week, all being well. So we'll have some news then, hopefully.